good morning, and welcome to today's webinar. We appreciate you joining us. My name is Isabel Perry, and I'm going to be your moderator. This presentation will be on understanding exclusions and non-applicable clauses in ISO 9001, presented by Joseph Krolikowski, PJR's QMS and ABMS Program Manager. So a few quick housekeeping rules. There is a Q&A portion that we'll be going over at the end of today's presentation. So if you have any questions for our presenter, please put your questions in there. And the slides and the recording will be available after today's webinar. So go to our website or our YouTube to check out this presentation. Any additional questions after the recording today, please contact us through our website for more information. Now, Joe will take it away discussing today's topic.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Joe Krolikowski. Glad to have you all here. So our topics for today, we're going to be unpacking what are non-applicable clauses, where that terminology comes from. We're going to talk about the high-level requirements that apply to this issue, and there's actually quite a few places where these requirements are rooted. We're going to talk about outsourcing and how that impacts these requirements. We're going to look back a little bit at some of the historical aspects of these concepts. We'll talk about outsourcing as it appears in the current standard. We'll review the impact of a limited scope on non-applicable clauses. And as Isabella mentioned, we will have some time for your questions at the end of the presentation. So for our presentation today, just please be aware, we're going to be examining these concepts as they are addressed in ISO 9001-2015. Now, these same concepts appear in many other standards. They appear in AS 9100, ITF, but you have to understand that in those other sector-specific areas, there are sector-specific requirements. So if you happen to be joining us from a AS 9100 company or an ISO 13485 company, just please be aware that there are some nuanced aspects that may apply in your situation. Now, please note, we do offer webinars on these other standards, lots of other standards, and we can help you, as Isabella mentioned, if you want to reach out to us directly. So do visit our website if you've got some further information that you need. So let's start with what are non-applicable clauses. Where does that terminology come from? Well, it is rooted in section 4.3 from ISO 9001, where it states the following. It says that the organization scope needs to cover the types of products and services covered. It needs to provide then justification for any requirement of this international standard, in other words, ISO 9001, that the organization determines is not applicable to the scope of its quality management system. Now, clause 4.3 goes on to state that the scope, including these details and justification for non-applicable clauses, has to be maintained as documented information. In other words, it has to be on the record. Now, for our presentation today, I'm going to be referring to non-applicable clauses under the term exemptions. For no other reason, it's a little cleaner to call them that in the presentation. It's a little rolls off the tongue, just a little bit easier. So for an exemption to be justified, it has to be something that is not part of your quality management system as defined by the scope. Has to be something that you're not doing and that doesn't apply to you. And we're going to kind of unpack what that means as this presentation unfolds. So let's dig just a little bit deeper. And we'll begin with the high-level requirements. As I mentioned, there's a number of areas where we get guidance on this requirement. We start with the things that we've been provided by the TC 176 committee. These are the folks that wrote ISO 9001 itself, both the 2008 and 2015 revisions. There's also guidance that we're leveraging from the ISO 9001 Auditing Practices Group, or APG. This is a collective that is made up of folks representing both the ISO and the IAF. I'm going to be referring to content from the ISO 9001:2015 standard itself, both auditable content and guidance content. And lastly, I'll be referring to the 9002 document. This is a guidance document, a full-length guidance document that was published as a complement, if you will, to the 9001 standard. So lots of things that we have brought to bear in putting this presentation together for you. So let's begin with a little bit of historical context. We're going to go back all the way to 2008, October 2008. And this was shortly after the ISO 9001:2008 standard was published. The TC 176 committee issued two officially binding guidance documents. They were binding at that time. And these were the 524R6, which was guidance on ISO 9001:2008 section 1.2, and 630R3, which was guidance on outsourced processes. Now, these two documents taken together, they included a requirement that at the time was somewhat controversial. So what was so controversial? Well, what these two guidance documents provided were examples of exemptions. Now, at the time, most of these were well understood examples, but there was one item that stood out as controversial. From R6, examples of situations where conformity to ISO 9001:2008 should not be claimed include where an organization excludes a requirement on the basis of the activity being outsourced. And then from R3, 630R3, it says that the intent of Clause 4.1 from ISO 9001:2008 is to emphasize that when an organization chooses to outsource a process, it cannot ignore that process and it cannot be excluded. Now, in other words, any exemption that's rooted in outsourcing is not acceptable and should result in a nonconformance during the audit. Now, this is guidance that came from the committee that wrote the standard. There is no getting around it. Now, obviously, the elephant in the room is design. And this is the one that even today, all these years later, we continue to have clients that experience angina when we start asking about design. Historically, we did have clients that would claim an exemption for design on the basis that designs were being provided by a parent company, a sister company. Now, we've learned that those exemptions were potentially not appropriate and should not have been automatically accepted. I'm going to clarify what we mean by that in a few slides here. There are two basic justifications to exempt design and development. Firstly, if the auditee is receiving a complete product design from their customers, a design that is ready for the shop floor. Okay. Secondly, if the auditee is not in a position where they're manufacturing products based on a product design. So if it's a warehouse, a distributorship, a service company, etc. Now, there is a third option that we'll be unpacking a little bit later in the presentation here. So one of the questions that we got, especially early on when we started approaching this a little more carefully, we would get asked, well, how can PJR audit something that we don't do? And this was expressed not just by clients, but even by auditors. Auditors would say, well, how can I audit something they're not doing? Well, the expectation in an outsourcing situation is not that you're going to audit the actual activity itself, but rather the outsourcing controls that have been applied. So let's talk about what that means. And we'll start with what is outsourcing. Well, we begin our understanding of this by reviewing the definition that's provided in the ISO 9000 document. The 9000 document, you are hopefully aware, this is fundamentals and vocabulary. Among other things, the 9000 document provides binding definitions of multiple terms that are used in the 9001 and other standards. Outsource is defined as to make an arrangement where an external organization performs part of an organization's function or process. Now, please note the wording here. You are outsourcing this to someone who is performing a part of your function or process. That means that the organization still has ownership of the function or process, even if it isn't performed in their facility. That is very important to our understanding of this concept. And that point is further emphasized in the note that appears right after the definition. The note says, an external organization is outside the scope of the management system, but the outsourced function or process is within the scope. So again, that's very crucial to our understanding of this concept. So what are some things that get outsourced? Well, there's a lot of possibilities. Probably the most common item that we see outsourced is what most folks refer to as calibration, using an outside lab to verify measurement devices. That's probably the most common. And we see lots of other possibilities. Training is outsourced, design can be outsourced, purchasing, manufacturing, etc. And I've provided clausal references for each of these. Now, as to where is outsourcing discussed in ISO 9001? Well, the primary clause where outsourcing appears is section 8.4, where it says that you shall ensure that externally provided processes, products, and services conform to requirements. Now, all forms of externally provided processes, products, and services are addressed in section 8.4, whether through an arrangement with an associate company or outsourcing processes to an external provider. And that clarification comes from section A8. So outsourcing can be any one of a number of things, and that's made clear in the A8 guidance. Now, as I mentioned, we have other high-level requirements that apply here. In the 9002 guidance document, it says that external providers could include a corporate headquarters facility, an associate company, a supplier, or someone to whom the organization has outsourced a process. The Auditing Practices Group weighed in on this. They issued a document called Scope of ISO 9001. Now, that document indicates that outsourcing is to be considered an input to the development of an organization's scope. Now, as a reminder, when we audit an outsourced activity, we're not auditing the actual activity itself, but rather we're confirming that the appropriate controls have been established. So in the case of an organization that has outsourced training, we're not going to travel to the training company. We're going to look at the records that were provided by that training company. So what do we mean by controls? How do you control an outsourced process? Well, technically, any methodology of control should be acceptable. Think about it. How do you control the things that you are asking outside providers to give you? Well, the usual suspects: contracts, purchase orders, email correspondence, terms and conditions on your website, going to that external provider and doing an audit, requiring the external provider to have their own management system certification, even providing work instructions in some circumstances. All of these are evidence of control over outsourced processes. So let's consider the case of a company that chooses to outsource 100% of their calibration activity to a calibration laboratory. Well, what would the auditor be looking at? Well, we would potentially look at the contract that was issued to that laboratory. We would definitely be looking at calibration records that were issued by the calibration laboratory. And we would definitely be looking at gauge labeling that was applied by that calibration laboratory. You'll note none of those things equivocate to a review of the actual calibration or verification activity. Now, in this scenario, none of the applicable clauses from ISO 9001:2015 that pertain to calibration, those are the ones found in section 7.1.5, none of these would be claimed as an exemption. Now, I want to draw your attention to one of the things that we do as part of our audit process and also part of our executive committee review process, and that is reviewing the client's website. This is something that has led to discussions on certain things when it's done as part of the review process. When we review the website, we want to make sure, first of all, does the website accurately reflect the organization's scope? So in other words, if we've got you certified for, say, injection molding, and we go on your website and it says construction management, that's a concern. That's something that we want to inquire about and get some clarification on. Also, we want to confirm, does the website talk about design activity, especially if the organization is classified as no design? Now, if we find if we find evidence of design being referenced on the website and our client is classified as no design, often the explanation that we get falls into one of a handful of categories. They could tell us, well, it's actually our corporate office that provides the designs. Well, we've learned that that's actually not acceptable. That is, it's not acceptable for the client to be classified as no design in that situation. Sometimes we're told we don't really provide design services, but we want to attract potential customers by saying that we do. Well, again, this is also not acceptable. The website and design classification do need to be aligned with each other. And in rare circumstances, we are told we did design our products, but all of our designed items are legacy. We're not doing any current design activity. And as I said, this is a somewhat rare circumstance. We do take these on a case-by-case basis. I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about exemptions that are rooted in a limited scope. Now, to be sure, most of PJR's clients intend for their entire operation to be included in their ISO 9001 certification. There are a small number of cases, however, where we have a client that wants to have a limited scope, whether it's for financial or for other reasons. Now, where that is the case, having a limited scope can potentially mean that a portion of the 9001 standard may be considered for exemption that would not have been possible in a full scope situation. So let's consider an example. Let's say that we have an organization that manufactures clothing for industrial and commercial markets. For this example, we'll assume that their product lines are leather goods and polyester goods. Now, you may recall that in section 855 of ISO 9001, there are some clauses that talk about warranty provisions. So in our example, let's assume that this organization offers warranty on their polyester products, but not on their leather products. Now, if this company were to only get certified for their leather product line, so in other words, they don't have any products within scope where there are warranty provisions, it is possible that they may be able to claim a full or partial exemption from Section 855. Now, if we perform an audit and there is an organization that is claiming an inappropriate exemption, we have trained our auditors to issue a nonconformance for those situations. Now, we looked a little bit earlier at what the probable clause numbers to cite would be. Now, if you are given a nonconformance, any nonconformance that you don't agree with, you do have the right to file a dispute or appeal. We do have a process. It's our Procedure Pro 10 that's available anytime on our website if this is something that you need to explore. Okay, so in mid-2017, a little less than 10 years ago now, we rolled out a new certification option for clients that receive some or all of their product designs from a parent or affiliate company. And that option was christened as the full design outsourced option. So if we have a client that is classified as full design outsourced, here is some of what that's going to mean for that client. First of all, audit time will potentially be calculated in the same manner currently used for clients that are classified as no design. I'll give you some clarification on that in a couple of slides. Any organization that is classed as full design outsourced must not claim any part of the design section of the standard as an exemption. And also, the certificate that is issued to a full design outsourced company has to acknowledge the outsourced design as part of the scope statement. So there are some expectations that are placed on a full design outsourced company. And obviously, one of the primary expectations is that outsourced process controls have to be assessed. When we rolled out our new full design outsourced option, we actually reached out to the ANAB to make sure that we had their blessing on what we were doing. Now, ANAB, for its part, told us they felt what we were doing was fine, but they emphasized to us that the controls being applied to the outsourced processes had to be fully implemented by our clients, and we had to include those controls in the audit activity. Now, I've provided some direct quotes from our communication with ANAB from that time. They said, complexity, activities, and risks that are present due to an outsourced provider of processes, products, or services need to be controlled and confirmed as outlined in Section 8.3 of the ISO 9001 standard. They then went on to say, Section 8.4 has many requirements that apply to the organization and must be confirmed and evaluated by the certification body when certifying an organization. So in other words, you do need to carry out your due diligence in making sure that this is all properly controlled. They also emphasized to us that any automatic time reductions in relation to design status are not appropriate. The CB is required to clearly, effectively, and realistically justify and document justifications for any adjustment from the established audit date tables. So in other words, PJR cannot be expected to initially reduce audit time for a classification of full design outsourced unless an auditor has already provided assurance that the controls applied are mature, effective, and can be successfully assessed with no added audit time, no special added audit time. So as of 2017, we now have 4 classification options pertaining to design status. Let's go ahead and review those 4 options. Obviously, the first option is full design. This is applied to any organization that is responsible for the design of at least one of the products that they manufacture. Now, a full design company cannot exclude any part of Section 8.3 from ISO 9001. Next, we have no design. An organization that is receiving all designs from their customers or otherwise is not interacting with product designs, like we mentioned earlier, warehouses, staffing companies, these sorts of things. All sections of Clause 8.3 can be claimed as not applicable for companies that are classified in this manner. Now, please note, if you receive product designs from parent affiliate companies, but you don't have any responsibility for product design and you are not advertising or otherwise representing that you're responsible for product design, it is possible that you may also qualify for classification as no design. So those situations are looked at very carefully in the context of the audit. We do have a third option referred to as partial design. Now, this is going to be for any organization that provides technical input, review, verification, or other design services to their client, but does not typically have responsibility for final design approval. So if you get a part print from your customer and you have to go back to the customer and tell them adjustments that are needed, or you need to have changes to raw materials or things like that, that's a partial design situation. Now, in a partial design arrangement, portions of Section 8.3 can be claimed as not applicable, but not all of Section 8.3 can be claimed as not applicable. Key distinction. And then lastly, our newest option, full design outsourced. Any organization that is receiving all or some of its product designs from parent or affiliate companies or subcontractors and is advertising or otherwise representing that they are responsible for product design activity. All portions of Section 8.3 of ISO 9001 are applicable for full design outsourced companies. So in conclusion, PJR wants to ensure that our audit process is value added for our clients while addressing all applicable requirements. Making sure that exemptions are justified is an important part of this process. I'd like to invite you to tune in for one of our other webinars. We have a special presentation that we do on advertising your certification, Pro 3. Its title is Understanding Pro 3 and Related Bylaws Governing Proper Promotion of Your Management System Certification. It's a very helpful webinar if you are newly certified and want to make sure that you're advertising your certification in the correct way. And I'd like to invite you to join us for our webinar on PJ Vision. PJ Vision is going to be launching in a little over a month. It's going to be a great innovation to our auditing process. It's going to completely revolutionize the audit experience for our clients. So I invite you to join us for the webinar, Getting to Know PJ Vision. If you want to learn more about PJ Vision, we do have some links already up on our website. We've actually got a whole page on the website dedicated to PJ Vision. And we do have webinars on a wide variety of other topics, process mapping, stage 1 audits, other standards, and so forth. If you'd like to be kept informed of the latest news automatically, the best way for you to do that is to visit our website at www.pgr.com. Go down to the bottom of the page, enter your email address in the provided space, and click subscribe. You will be opted in for updates on changes to PGR programs, standard updates, and other helpful points of information. I do thank you for your time and attention. As a reminder, the slides and voiceover will both be accessible on our website shortly after we're finished. And I'm going to go ahead and terminate screen share here. And Isabella, can I have a little help with Q&A? I think I found it. Okay, so do we have questions? Okay, I see a question from Jeff Mays. Customer evaluating our ISO certificate was of the opinion that our ISO certificate must specifically state on it exemptions claimed. Certificates states what the certification includes, not the exemptions. Okay, Jeff, let me assure you, there is no requirement within any of the applicable bylaws that says your certificate has to specifically call out that Section 8.3 is excluded. That is a common misunderstanding, let's say. So your customer was misinformed. I can assure you that is not a firm requirement. Any other questions I can answer today? Okay, well, wishing all of you a great day, and Isabella, thank you for moderating this webinar.